right, good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming down tonight. We are live from Books and Books in Coral Gables, so a note to our internet audience watching at home. If you're interested in tonight's book, we could ship it to wherever you are in the U.S. free of charge. Just call the number on your screen. Yeah, it's pretty good. This evening, Books and Books, in collaboration with Alison Burgos of Seed, Food, and Wine, is very happy to present Ms. Vani Hari and her new book, The Food Babe Way. Ms. Hari is a food activist and the creator of foodbabe.com. She travels the world to speak about health and food awareness, and in her work, she has influenced how food giants like Kraft, Subway, Chipotle, Chick-fil-A, and Starbucks create their products, steering them towards more healthful policies. In this book, Ms. Hari shows us an easy and accessible plan to cut out hidden food toxins, lose weight without counting calories, and get healthy in just 21 days. With easy-to-follow meal plans, shopping lists, recipes, and her personal story of transformation, you'll learn to be your own food investigator, activist, and nutritionist. Here to tell us more about it, please give a very warm welcome to Ms. Vani Hari.
Thank you. That's such a nice, warm welcome. Isn't this the coolest bookstore ever? Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's a bar in the middle of it. Although I bet those people don't know what they're drinking because there's no ingredients listed on alcohol. But yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I just want to thank Books and Books for having me, number one, and for Kathleen for driving me here, and for the Seed Festival for sponsoring this event and the event tomorrow in Fort Lauderdale. I'm just so excited to be here. Well, first of all, I'm excited to be here because it's really warm, and I was really excited to put on shorts. This is actually shorts. Yeah, it's not a skirt. But and I'm just thrilled to see this amount of people interested in food. Because I can tell you, when I was younger, I was not interested in food. I was only interested in eating it. I didn't really know what was in it. And all of this excitement and this movement and everything that we've done together as the Food Babe Army has been all an accident. When I was younger, I ate at McDonald's every single week. Even one of my aunts, who came here from India to live with us when she was 16, worked at McDonald's. And we would always fill out those little coloring things on Father's Day and Mother's Day to get our free breakfast. And my parents were both immigrants from India, and so they really didn't understand American food to be different than Indian food. They just thought food is food. Food would keep us growing as young children, me and my brother, and so they let us eat whatever we wanted to fit in. And as an Indian girl living in the South, living in Charlotte, North Carolina, being one of the only Indian girls in my school, Indian food was weird to me because none of my other friends were eating it. None of their moms were cooking these really strong curries at home. And so I shunned my mother's cooking, even though she was making Indian food every single day, almost for herself and my dad. But for me and my brother, we would get whatever we wanted. So if that meant my dad coming home from teaching at the college, if he'd pick up Wendy's, he would do that. Burger King, he would do that. And when I would throw a fit because I didn't want one of those things, I would put in a microwave Salisbury steak, and that's what I would eat. I still remember the taste. And the reason why I remember the taste is all the MSG that's in that Salisbury steak. And at the time, I didn't know that the food industry was actually engineering that Salisbury steak for me to remember that flavor and crave that flavor and taste that flavor over and over again, as well as the McDonald's and the Wendy's and the Burger King. And when I say those names, distinct flavors and tastes start to stimulate my taste buds even today, even though I haven't had any of those things in several years. And so as a result, at the time, I had no idea that food was actually affecting my health. I thought the ailments that I had as a child were genetic. I had eczema, asthma, allergies. I was in and out of doctor's offices. I was on antibiotics every season, sometimes twice a season. I was on steroids. I was on 8 prescription drugs for most of my life. And when my parents took me to doctors, they didn't ask me about what I was eating. They didn't ask my parents about what they were feeding me. They gave me drugs, and they gave me shots, and they hospitalized me when I had allergic reactions. And they didn't really ask about food. And it wasn't until my early 20s that I started to make this connection. I had just gotten out of college, got this awesome job working for a Big Six consulting firm. And for those of you that don't know what a Big Six consulting firm is, it's like, one of the most prestigious jobs someone in business school or technology school can get right out of school, and they give you a really nice paycheck. But they put you on the road, they take you to this brainwashing camp, if you will, where they teach you all about how to please the client, talk in group situations with C-level executives, and you do all of this very conservative type work as well as very, very serious type work. So when I had my first client, and they said, you know what, you're going to be on the road, you're going to be traveling to and from Atlanta, you're going to have an expense account, you're going to be able to expense up to $60 a day, I think it was around there, $60 a day of whatever you want to eat, and we're going to pay for it. And we're going to fly you every single week. And you know what that means, you get like status, and you're in your early 20s and you're flying first class, and it's like this big deal. And then you're on this expense account where, because of our project that we had, it was this really serious project where we were converting all these 27 banks into one, and it was actually one project of the year, but it almost killed me during the process, because during the time trying to fit in and trying to excel at this job, I was doing what all of my coworkers were doing around me, just like I did when I was younger, where I was trying to fit in and just eat what all of the other kids around me were eating. So I ate the bagels and the muffins and the donuts for breakfast that were catered into the office. I ate the big spreads of Italian food for lunch and the barbecue spreads, and I'd go out at night to these fancy steakhouses on the expense account where my boss was actually paying, and we'd have 5-course meals. And I didn't know how this was affecting my body. I didn't know that I would start gaining weight, but I did. And I started gaining it dramatically. I mean, between 30 and 40 pounds within a few months. And so I started to look really bad, started to feel really bad. All of my health issues started to just become more pronounced. And I ended up in the hospital with appendicitis one night. And the night before I actually had my appendix taken out of my body, the first doctor who saw me told me that there was nothing wrong, that just to go home and take Advil. And so if it wasn't for my parents' sixth sense to say, you know what, we just think you should have a second opinion, I might not be here today. Because that next morning when I saw that second doctor and he threw me into emergency surgery to have my appendix taken out, saying that it was about to burst, it was a pretty scary situation for to be in your early 20s and to have this kind of health issue. And they say appendicitis is very random, and I'm sure there's people in here who've had their appendix taken out. But to me at the time, with all of the health issues I had been experiencing, along with the weight gain, along with this issue, and just feeling really bad and feeling out of control of my life, I just had this wake-up call moment. I remember being in my bed recovering. It was December, and everybody was out shopping for the holidays, and all I wanted to do was go out and shop and buy something for a friend, and I couldn't even sit up because I had a cut down my side, an organ taken out of my body, and I was just, I wanted to just feel like everybody else my age, and I wasn't. So that January, new year, new you, like most of us, we always try to get back on the bandwagon. Well, I did, and I stayed there. And I started to channel this energy that I had learned in this knowledge I had learned in high school, where I was a top-tiered ranked debater. I was number one in state 3 years in a row, and even got recruited to college to be in debate. And but I didn't end up doing debate in college because it wasn't practical. It wasn't going to give me a job. And my parents, who were very strict, and they had a very strict definition of success, and they were paying for my college, didn't really believe in me pursuing debate. So I switched my major to computer science. But back when I was in high school, I really learned how to research. Back then, we didn't have Google. So we actually had to go to the library, places like this, and learn how to read and research and look up information and actually photocopy it and carry it with us to all these different debate tournaments where we would have these huge tubs of evidence and we would take them to debate tournament all across the country. And back then you didn't have to pay extra baggage fees for airlines because fuel wasn't such an issue. But so we would carry these big tubs of evidence everywhere. And one year's topic was healthcare. And I was using all the information that I learned about the healthcare system and the food system to win debate rounds, but I wasn't using it towards my own health at all in high school. I didn't know how to apply it to my own health until I started to have this health crisis in my early 20s, many years later. And so I started to research food. I started to research health. I started to research how do I lose this weight. And one of the first people that I met right after this crisis was a coworker. She sat in the cubicle next to me, and she was on Weight Watchers. And she taught me how to count points. And so I started counting points, and I remember going by my boss's desk, who she used to have these big, like Costco-sized containers of Twizzlers at her desk, and I'd be like, oh, 1 point. I get a Twizzler. It's just 1 point. And nothing was really coming off. I wasn't really losing weight. I wasn't feeling that great. And I was like, well, what is the deal with these points? Are these points really going to make me healthier? You know, what am I actually eating? And so I started to look at the ingredients in those Twizzlers, as well as other foods that I started eating. I started to find books that would teach me about actual nutrition, books like Spiritual Nutrition and Conscious Eating. These books are not for the faint of heart. They're this thick and really in-depth about the nutrition of food. And started just voraciously reading and making health a passion. And as a result, I started to lose the weight. It came off and it never came back. And it hasn't come back for over 10 years. Not to mention, I went off every single one of my prescription drugs, all 8 of them gone. My eczema vanished, my asthma went away, my allergies improved, so much so that my body completely changed. My face shape changed, so much so that one of my aunts to this day says there's no way she didn't have any work done. That doesn't make any sense. She doesn't look anything like she did when she was in high school. And I tell you, what food can do is absolutely miraculous. It is medicine. And the things that I found out through my own research and through my own journey of healing myself, I just couldn't shut up about it. And so my friends started hearing about it. And I became the food police at my house. So my brother especially, someone who's 7 years older, of course, doesn't want to listen to their younger sister, hated when I came over and would go through his pantries and point out all of the things that he needed to get rid of. And I did this to my parents too, and they couldn't stand it. You know, they still love me and they'd still have me over, but you know, we would get big knockdown, drag out fights about it. And so eventually I started just living by example and stopped preaching, if you will. I still, you know, would cringe when I'd see my nephews eat something that I don't want them to eat, or I'd cringe when I see my dad stop at McDonald's just for the coffee, you know, and I'd cringe at these things, right? And they saw this. But the people who really inspired me to kind of take this another level and start a blog were my coworkers who I was continuing to travel with in this really fast-paced job that I was in this very serious job working for C-level executives. And I was just taking on a role in 2009, traveling to and from Detroit every single week. And I was scared to death because I was like, is there like organic food in Detroit? Or am I going to have anything to eat there? I'm going to be in this office environment again, away from my kitchen. Am I going to be able to make it? Am I going to gain weight? Am I going to get sick? I mean, all these things are going through my head. And I was really scared to death. And I was sitting at a group dinner with a bunch of friends. They'd come over to my house, actually. And I said to them, you know what? I'm going to take this job, and I'm going to learn how to eat organically on the road. And I'm going to teach other people to do it one day. And I might write a book about it. And that was the first inkling of like, I want to write a book, or I want to teach people that this can be done. Because you know what? A girl from Charlotte, North Carolina, where we didn't have a Whole Foods up until 2 years ago, if she can figure out how to eat organically, anybody can in this country. And so, so in 2009, I took on this job, and I was traveling to and from, and I learned how to pack my food, certain things that I couldn't get other places. I learned how to order at restaurants. I learned what to do when you're in a hotel situation, of like what they're willing to help you with, what they're not willing to help you with, where you need to make sacrifices, because I tell you, at the end of the day, we're never going to avoid the amount of food chemicals that have been put into our food supply. When the FDA was given approval to look at our food additives over 30 years ago, there were 800. Now there's 10,000. We're just not going to be able to avoid them all. So perfect is not what I'm telling you here today to achieve, because I tell you, I'm not perfect. I'm far from perfect. But and I don't expect anybody in this room to be perfect, because I think you would just go completely neurotic. And even if you were to try to be perfect and live inside a bubble, that bubble would probably off-gas on you. So back to the story. I'm in Detroit, and I'm learning to live this way. And I'm realizing that my coworkers are starting to learn all of these principles that I started living by, learning my habits, started following some of my habits, and their lives started to change. A woman, I remember that I was sitting next to, Rachel, she had a lot of health issues. She couldn't sleep at night. She started implementing some of the things that I had been doing, and her life improved. Friends around me, my really close girlfriends, wanted to know what I was doing. Why was my hair all of a sudden so shiny and thick? What used to be so thin and ratty? Why was my skin so clear for the first time ever? Why was I able to just maintain my weight without dieting, always being on the next best diet? And so they really encouraged me to share this information. And so I wanted to start the blog. It was August of 2010, and I'm sitting in my couch, and I'm saying, okay, honey, and I call over to Mr. Food Babe, my husband, who I affectionately call that now. His real name is Finley. And I said, hey, Finley, can you register eathealthyliveforever.com? And he says, no, that is a horrible name. No one is going to remember that. And I'm like, okay, well then come up with a better name. I was pretty offended, because I was like, I thought it was a great name. Eat healthy, live forever, And so he comes back a few minutes later, and he says, well, what about Food Babe? And at first, I have to tell you, I was not having any of it. I was like, no, I know, I'm not going to call myself the Food Babe. And first of all, for most of my life, I was a tomboy. I was not into makeup. I was not into dressing up. I would never wear anything like I'm wearing right now. I wouldn't even put on makeup. So, I was never confident enough to even be anything close to a babe. So for now to call the food, the food blog that I want to start Food Babe just seems so ludicrous. And so I called one of my best friends, and I said, what do you think about this name, Food Babe, for the food blog? And she said, oh my gosh, it's perfect. That describes you perfectly. And I'm like, no. It doesn't need to be about me. It needs to be about, how do we create food babes in the world? Like, how do we teach people how to become a food babe? And I see lots of food babes here, so this is working. And so for the first year and a half, I actually never had my photo on the front header, because I was still working in the corporate world. I was still hiding behind this name, Food Babe, and was actually citing all my blog posts Food Babe. And that's how I became known as the Food Babe. It wasn't because of I sought out to do this. It was just, I was hiding behind this kind of identity so that I could blog and share my passion really openly online, and also have this really, corporate conservative job on the other hand. And before I'd started Food Babe, I'd never been on social media before. I wasn't a Facebook user, even personally. And so my friends also encouraged me, in order to share your blog, you need to get on Facebook, you need to get on Twitter, you need to get on all these social media things. And I just had an Instagram intervention last year, so I've only been on there a year. But, and so they said, this is how you spread the word. And I said, okay, I'll get on Facebook. And now there's close to 1 million people on our page, which is just insane. And people think I'm some social media expert. And I'm like, I don't know a thing about it. And I tell you what I do know is, when you start to share your passion and you start to share some information that people are desperately needing in their life, and that people are out there like me, suffering like I used to be, and walking around like a zombie now that I think back on how I used to feel, and I can remember how I used to look and the way I was living my life, and it was like I was living in a different body, like an alien body, because now I truly know what real health feels like. I know that sharing this message is what's created this movement, and it's every single one of you guys out there, the Food Babe Army, that's carrying this message across the nation faster than ever, across the world faster than ever, and creating a movement that is absolutely unstoppable. So when I started the blog, it was this passion. It wasn't something that I ever thought I would be doing full time. I never thought I'd be a New York Times best-selling author or called one of the most influential people on the internet by Time Magazine. I still see those things next to my name, like in my profile or my bio, and I'm like, what? And I say the same thing to my mother and to my best friends, and I'm like, what? I mean, this is crazy. I can't even fathom what has happened in the last 3.5 to 4 years. The blog will be 4 years old next month. And it's because of you guys out here. And I tell you, as soon as I ended up quitting my job, and it was 1.5 years later, and it was after huge corporations like Chick-fil-A, Chipotle were responding to us. They were responding to the writings, but I say they were responding to us because we were carrying this message. I would write about something I was really passionate about, like what was in a Chick-fil-A sandwich, and you guys out there would share that information so virally that they would have to respond and do something about it, and so much so that they had to invite me to their headquarters to try to stop the bleeding, right? To stop the lack of customers, because a lot of people said, you know what? I found out what's in Chick-fil-A now. I'm not going to eat there anymore. I didn't know that they were using factory farmed meat. I didn't know that one of the first ingredients in their sandwich was MSG. I didn't know that there are close to 100 ingredients in their famous Chick-fil-A sandwich. And so people were finding this information out for the very first time, and me too included. A lot of the investigations that are revealed on foodbabe.com now, and if you guys haven't, some people in this room haven't been to foodbabe.com, just click on the investigations tab and you can read about all of the investigations. But the investigations that I've conducted have all been learning experiments for me too. I mean, every single day I'm learning something new about the food industry that is absolutely shocking to me. I just can't believe this is happening. And I have many, many more books in me to write about that. But once these big companies started to respond, Chipotle deciding to post their ingredients online for the first time ever and actually do something that no other fast food chain had ever done, which is actually to label their foods genetically engineered or not. They did that as a response to a huge investigation that was started on foodbabe.com. And seeing those type of huge corporations respond finally kind of encouraged me to say, okay, my calling is not at the banking corporate world working in this cubicle. My calling is really to be a food activist, to really inspire these companies to change, inspire them by educating everyone about what's really in their food so that people start to care and people start to take back control of their health. And so in December of 2012, I was on the top of Machu Picchu. I was traveling there for vacation over the Christmas holidays. And it was the day the world was supposed to end, that auspicious day. I didn't think it was going to end, but it was that day. And we were on Machu Picchu. And of course, there's no cell phone service, okay? All of a sudden, I got cell phone service. We sat down for lunch, and I looked down, and I got an email, and it came through, and it said, Vani, your project is ending at the bank. Would you like to renew and start a new one in January? And I tell you, I don't think I would have had enough courage to do what I did that day had I not gotten that email. It was really a gift. It was a gift. And so after I got that email, I looked over at Mr. Food Babe, Finley, and said, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be Food Babe full time. I'm going to be a food activist. And come January, I'm going to figure out how to make this a career. And I was making no money doing foodbabe.com. I had like no ads up. I had nothing. You know, a typical blogger usually makes money with ads and other things, but this was just a complete passion project. So it wasn't like I was doing anything with it. And I was making good money at the bank. You know, I was making 6 figures, which was awesome, right? Awesome. And so to give that up and say no, I was scared to death, because my idea of success for all of my life was my 401k, my health insurance, my security of having a job, and also my parents who live close by in Charlotte. That was their, you know, idea of security. And so I always, you know, want to make them proud of me. And so I always have them in the back of my head. And so, of course, for the first couple months of quitting that job, I did not tell them. And so, but when I did tell Finley, you know, this is what I want to do, I expected him to say, how are we going to pay the mortgage? Because we were definitely dependent on both of our salaries. And instead he said, what have you been waiting for? Those are the exact words. And I tear up every time I tell this story, because everyone around me, including him, was really believing in me, including you guys out there that were carrying this message. You guys really believed in me. And I wasn't believing in myself. I was really scared. And I was attached to these ideas of success that weren't really true success, because now when I think about, and there's this quote, and I had to find it on my phone. I'm gonna find it right now. This is an awesome quote. Actually, a friend shared it on Instagram today, and it just really rang through to me. And this quote says, "Be who you were created to be, and you will set the world on fire," by St. Catherine of Siena. And that's what I decided to do, basically, that day, is set the world on fire. Because as soon as I quit my job, I took on one of the largest food corporations in the United States, Kraft, who's now just got bought by Heinz, which that's going to be real interesting to watch what happens there. We got ketchup and Lunchables together. So I decided to take on Kraft, and the reason is that finally, when I got back from that vacation and I had no job and I was making no money and I had all of this free time, I decided to investigate why European people were healthier than Americans. And I started to compare food products, the same exact food products that are sold in Europe, to the same exact food products that are sold here by our own U.S. companies. And what I found out was so appalling and so shocking that I had to do an investigation, and I had to hold one of these companies accountable for their actions. And I've actually have inspired a bunch of other companies to do things as a result. And so one of the things I found out was that Kraft mac and cheese here in the United States was using yellow 5 and yellow 6, 2 ingredients, very controversial, linked to hyperactivity in children, can cause allergic reactions, can be contaminated with carcinogens. And when I found out the Kraft mac and cheese that the same Kraft, U.S. Kraft, was making for other countries didn't have these ingredients, were using real ingredients like paprika and beta carotene, I felt like that double standard had to stop. And so I started a petition, and I originally started with one of my friends, Lisa Leak, and within a week we had 200,000 signatures on this petition that asked Kraft to just serve the same mac and cheese that you serve other countries to us. And when I eventually stormed their door in April, a month after I started that petition in Northfield, Illinois, where it was freezing cold, and where the book actually opens up in the introduction, and you can read about that encounter. You know, when I stormed their door, I never imagined that a company would be so cold and so not willing to listen to so many people. And now that petition has close to 400,000 signatures, and that is why Kraft has lost money quarter after quarter and has just now become acquired. Kraft wasn't one of the only companies that was doing this. Starbucks does it too. Starbucks here in the United States has a pumpkin spice latte that has caramel coloring level 4 that's considered a carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer and the National Toxicology Program. But you know what? Starbucks has figured out a way not to use this caramel color in Europe. Why do we get the potentially cancerous caramel color here in the United States? And why did they figure out a way to make their coffee, I guess, less brown? I'm not sure why they're using the caramel color in an opaque cup that is already brown, you know, the mixture inside. And same with Subway. Subway was using azodicarbonamide here in the United States. This is an ingredient found in yoga mats, the famous yoga mat chemical. This ingredient was banned all over the globe because it was linked to health issues, including asthma in workers that were handling the substance. It's considered a carcinogen when heated. When a truck holding this substance in Chicago turned over several years ago, people had to be evacuated from a mile radius. And this was in our bread. This is in Subway's Eat Fresh bread. They were using it here in the United States, but not in other countries. So that was another petition that you might so famously know the Food Babe Army for. But it is something that I think needs to be addressed. If these companies out there, these American companies, can make their products safer for citizens overseas, I think they have a moral and ethical obligation to do the same here. And you saw this same thing also with General Mills and Kellogg's. When you'd buy a box of Rice Krispies here in the United States, you get BHT. But if you buy it in Europe, you don't get BHT. Well, what's BHT? BHT is called butylated hydroxytoluene. This is something that's sprayed to the outside liner of the bags that eventually leaches into the cereal so the cereal can stay on the shelf for 18 months. This preservative is used here in the United States, but not in other countries in cereals. Maybe because millions of children eat cereal, and this is not a chemical that we should be exposing our children to. And this chemical is considered an endocrine disruptor, something that messes with our hormones. And think about all of the hormones that are affecting our children today, and the rise in age, the early puberty, all of the things that are happening. And also this substance is linked to cancer in animal studies. One of the things that really is interesting and something I've learned through my research and talking to scientists and chemists is that the reason why we study on animals with these chemicals is that most chemicals don't cause cancer in animals. Think about that. Most chemicals do not cause cancer in animals. So when if there is a situation where it causes a tumor, if there are certain circumstances that it does cause cancer in animals, we should pay attention. In Europe, they use a precautionary principle. The reason why they don't use these chemicals because they're considered guilty until proven innocent. They would rather be on the safe side than clean up the mess later. Here in the United States, we have the opposite standard. Our chemicals are innocent until proven guilty, and proven so guilty that they cause deaths and heart attacks and diabetes and obesity. I mean, given the example of trans fats, let's just talk about that for a minute. Trans fats, according to the CDC, is linked to 7,000 deaths and 20,000 heart attacks. People are dying because of this ingredient allowed in our food. It's still everywhere. It's in restaurants, unless you live in New York. It's in foods. It's in McDonald's. It's everywhere. Why hasn't the FDA finally woken up and mandated that this be removed from all of our food? Yes, they're starting to consider a ban, and they've been very slow about it, but how many more people have to die? How many more people have to have a heart attack because of this chemical that only improves the bottom line of the food industry and doesn't improve our health? And that's the type of questions, those are the type of questions that I'm asking on my blog every single day, and the type of questions that I want you guys asking of yourself every time you eat. And so I want to leave you with just this one thing. We do not have to be nutritionists. We do not have to be chemists. We do not have to be scientists to understand what we are eating. If my story inspires you, I hope it does, but I hope that you know inside of you, every single one of you in this room, that you have the power and the capability to learn what you're eating, and you have the power to learn about the ingredients. And anybody that tells you that you don't have the power, they want to keep you in the dark. They want to keep you eating these chemicals. They want to keep you in this system that's very, very broken. And I want you to break free. They're pro-chemical, I'm pro-consumer. And I want to look out for you guys. And I just want to thank you so much for being here tonight and being part. Thank you so much for being part of this movement with me, because I tell you, it is so inspiring to watch, and it's completely unstoppable. And just watch out, everyone, because we're going to have safe, affordable, healthy food for all one day.
Folks, there are plenty of time for questions, so if you just like to raise your hand, questions or comments for Vani.
Sure. Hey.
Is the food industry attacking you? How do you avoid it?
Right. Well, here's the deal. Again, you know my story now. And so you know this is all an accident. I never expected to be thrust into a spotlight or be a voice of a movement. I never really thought that that would be the case. And so I've never been prepared, really. I haven't been through media training or any of this preparation of like how to deal with criticism and all of these things. So last year was a really tough year of my life. It was actually the toughest year of my life. Trying to continue to find this passion to keep going forward amongst all of the attacks that I've personally had on me and my family. Every day, it feels like I have some really threatening form of attacks, and I'm trying to figure out, and I'm trying to ignore a lot of it right now, because I think that's the easiest way for me to keep moving forward and not get bogged down with it. And one thing that I've realized too is that the majority of people, the loudest critics, are likely intertwined with the food industry. And if you look at, it's really clear when you look at the loudest critics and you start to research who they are and what they do and who they work for or what they're studying in their universities or what they're promoting, you'll realize they're either pro-chemical, pro-GMO, pro-Monsanto, they're anti-anything natural therapy. They're against acupuncture. They're against any way of anything other than Western medicine. And you can find that out very clearly if you start to research the people who are very vocal about preventing this message from getting out. You know, one of the things they love to do is point out my mistakes. And I tell you, I've made mistakes. I am not perfect. And 4 years ago when I started this blog, it was for my couple friends and my mom, and my dad and my brother. It wasn't for all of you guys out here that found me. And so, it wasn't this rigorous, backed by study type of blog. And so, of course, I wrote some things that are erroneous, and I took them off my blog because, of course, they found them and made fun of it. And now, I have a different kind of standard, because with greater reach, there's greater responsibility. And so now I have an editorial board. I have, scientists and chemists and consumer protection agencies reviewing my work. I have all sorts of things that are checks and balances now that help, fend off the critics. But I also think the critics actually make me smarter in a way too. And I love that about them, because they do point out where there could be flaws, and I improve my arguments every single time then. And I use them to my advantage now. And if you're listening out there on live stream, keep attacking.
I just had a question. In your research, have you ever found any connection between all these companies that make our food and maybe the people that make the cancer drugs and so forth that would cure us once we got sick?
Well, there's actually one of the most vocal critics, which is kind of funny. I know he's taken money from pharmaceutical industry before, but it is all intertwined because who's really controlling the purse strings at the end of the day? It's the government. And unfortunately, the government is a revolving door with these huge industries. And so really, the people who have a financial interest in keeping us sick into this system where we keep buying drugs, or in a system where we keep buying junk food, so we get into the system of the healthcare system and just be like a parasite to it, we really need to break free from all of that. When people say to me, Vani, organic food is so expensive, what do? I said, do you know how much my 8 prescription drugs cost? That was a lot more than my organic food budget. A lot more. And you either...
Cancer costs $100K?
Yeah, getting cancer. Yeah, one type of, cancer is very expensive. And I've personally been witness to that with my mother-in-law who died of ovarian cancer, and the bills that my father-in-law still has sitting on his desk, and it's been years. So I know, and it's either you pay the farmer or you're going to pay the hospital. And I think it's really important for people to realize that they can find out more information faster than ever because it's becoming more available. A lot of this information about the food industry has been kept hidden from us for so long. And that's why you see these companies changing every 5 minutes. I mean, there's a headline every week of a company getting rid of some horrible, dreadful policy that they've been following for a long time that's been harming human health. So it's really up to us to make health our number one priority, because I can tell you right now, there's no way I would have been able to do this work and work a corporate job had I not been taking care of my health. And I really do believe if everybody were to make the commitment to take care of their health and make health their number one priority, they can give back to the world in such a bigger form and fashion than they ever thought was possible.
What do you think about aspartame in certain foods and fluoride in our water?
Yeah, so aspartame, so that's an artificial sweetener. It's found in a lot of foods. It's found in cereals too, healthy, quote unquote, cereals like Fiber One cereal, something I was eating trying to lose weight back then. Had no idea that it had an ingredient, aspartame, in it that is linked to a lot of health issues in animal studies, but also is considered one of those sweeteners, those artificial sweeteners, along with sucralose, which is Splenda, or saccharin, that's sweet and low. These artificial sweeteners actually trick the brain into thinking you're consuming calories when you're not. So when you have that sweet taste in your mouth, your body's like, oh, I'm getting calories. Well, great. But what happens is your body's actually not getting any calories because these are 0 or low calorie sweeteners. And so your body continues to crave food. And so you end up eating more than you should at the end of the day. And that's why there's these studies that are coming out left and right showing that a correlation with obesity to these artificial sweeteners, that it actually increases belly fat. There's a new study that we were just talking about in the car about that. And so that's definitely something, that's actually one of the sickening 15 ingredients in the first couple chapters of the book that you'll learn about. And then fluoride in water, of course, is an issue, and this is, a neurotoxin. So one of the things that I really want people to do is to filter their water as much as possible and really pay attention to the water that they're drinking and make sure, if you can, and it's hard for me when I'm traveling not to drink out of plastic, but I try to get glass as much as possible. And you, again, can only do the best you can, because I tell you, you're going to be exposed to them. And the only thing that's going to protect you against these chemicals is eating foods packed with nutrition.
Does bottled spring water have fluoride?
I'm sorry?
Bottled spring water.
I don't think so. No. Mm-mm. Yeah.
What about the plastic bottles that say BPA free?
Well, BPA is just one chemical. And they've actually found some of the chemicals that have replaced BPA to be worse than BPA. So there's a lot of chemicals in plastic, and so that's one of the things. And when it's heated, it can leach in. Yeah.
Nothing to do with what we've been talking. The supermarkets who are taking the organic stuff and they're mixing it with other products, like Publix. I'm seeing Publix is starting to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you want a product that is missing, they tell you, okay, talk to the manager, and we get you the products. Now, what can we do about? Because they're going backwards. We're not getting the stuff we want, and BJ's and others are putting more organic stuff.
Yeah, I really truly believe grocery stores are our friends. And that's one of the reasons you haven't seen like a huge petition or a target on foodbabe.com to the grocery stores, because grocery stores are actually buying these ingredients. So I think it's actually important for us to ask our grocery stores to carry what we want. And I know with my own personal story, when I asked my local grocery stores, my conventional grocery stores, to carry certain things for me because it was easier for me to get there than a Whole Foods or Earth Fare, they did it. So I would just be really vocal. There is a grocery guide that's available for everyone who's gotten the book. If you go to foodbabeway.com, just fill out the form and you can get this grocery guide. It's 40 pages. And at the end, it teaches you how to contact your grocery store, gives you the letter on what you can do and the specific items that you can request. And you can just print it out and give it to them, or even email it to them, copy and paste it and email it to them. But if enough of us do that, the more organics will become available. And we see that right now. I mean, I tell you, Costco 5 years ago, there wasn't an organic product, and now there's aisles and aisles full of it. So.
I have a question on the way to research. You mentioned earlier, back in the days, it was harder to come up to all this information, kind of like leaving us out in the dark. But now, I found myself searching on Google a lot too, because I was experiencing allergies and health issues myself. So I relied on Google as well. And I came across a lot of this information as well, just by my own research So what is your opinion on that? Because I've made a couple comments on social media where you would have someone kind of attack you and say, well, oh, that's no kind of, that's probably information you caught off Google. How smart are you, or how intellect are you to say something like that? This is information you're getting from Google. And I'm like, yeah, it is from Google because it's research that
Yeah, I mean, the National Health Institute is also on Google, and PubMed is also on Google, and a lot of really great resources are on Google. The Environmental Working Group's food database and Skin Deep database are on Google. So there's a lot of information is on Google, and that's just a way for them to really attack your ideas. And so you'll notice that when someone attacks your credibility or attacks the messenger or tries to attack something else and not basically defend the corporation or the chemical company, they're there for a different reason. So I would just ignore the haters, honestly, because that just sounds like a hater. And what I would do is just make sure you're getting your information from reputable sources. Now, when I write on foodbabe.com, I make sure all the little blue hyperlinks go back to the original study or the information that I got it from, so that you just don't think I'm just talking out of my ass. Oh, am I allowed to say that on live stream? Anyway, so now I do that. But not everyone does that. So you just want to make sure, especially if you're making a health decision for yourself, on what to eat or what not to eat or what to do, what not to do, we all have the responsibility to take this seriously and research it for ourselves. And I just hope my book teaches you how you can do that for yourself. I'm not telling you to believe everything I'm saying. I'm saying go become your own health advocate, because I can tell you right now, if I didn't do that for myself, I would still be on those prescription drugs, probably more, not looking like I'm doing, not doing what I'm doing, and these food companies would still be serving up their chemical, soup. So.
What type of allergies get better after you start eating right?
All sorts of allergies. So I had seasonal allergies. I also had a lot of food allergies. So,
What type of food allergies?
Oh gosh, what didn't I have? I've taken several different food allergy tests. I've done the pricks, and I've done the blood test too to check the proteins. And they've all resulted in different conclusions. And so one of the things that I've realized that's worked for me is like elimination diet, to kind of just determine, eliminate those foods and then slowly bring one back at a time, and then you can kind of see how your body reacts. And one of the things that I found out very recently is that I am really allergic to eggs. I have to be careful. Now, I still have my ice cream and my cake every now and then, that if someone makes me a home-baked cake with some organic eggs, I'm going to eat it. But I just need to know that I'm going to feel a little inflamed if I eat that. So.
What do you think about whey, especially shakes, meat, dairy? I ask this especially because I've had cancer twice, breast cancer, and I'm trying to change.
So, well, here's blessings for healing. So for whey, protein, and dairy, I actually have specific chapters in the book that all talk about that. And unfortunately, the majority of protein shakes in this country have been completely overprocessed. They've been completely denatured. They've been an isolated form, so it really doesn't retain its nutritional value anymore. And so really, for someone like you and someone like me, what I follow, I recommend getting your protein from whole, real food as much as possible. And when you do need to supplement, I personally supplement with one of the cleanest types of protein out there, which is hemp protein. It is the most digestible, has the perfect ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. So it's a really good alternative. Like a scoop is like 16 grams of protein. It's great. A new person. Oh, that's easy. I love that question. I love that question. It's so easy. That's so easy. Kale. It's so easy. That's such an easy question. It's great. Kale and cake are my two favorites. And pizza. Pizza, kale, and cake. Those three things.
I adore your recipes. They're just fantastic. Keep them coming.
Thank you. Cookbooks next.
And how did you feel when you saw the advertisement for Subway that they were taking out the chemical in the bread? How did that feel?
So it was about a month after the petition. So when I launched the petition on Subway, it got 50,000 signatures overnight. It was the most viral food petition I'd ever seen in my life. And so viral that the media captured the moment and took it even more and took it worldwide. I was getting interviewed by Chinese television. The Chinese people were very concerned that this ingredient was in their food, and they found out that they were scot-free, that Subway had decided not to use azodicarbonamide for China, but was using it for the United States. I mean, these are the type of interviews I was having. It was an insane week. I remember not even getting up to shower and just being on phone calls with reporters left and right. And a month later, me and my husband it's after dinner, and we're sitting down on the couch, and all of a sudden this commercial comes on, and it says, new improved bread at Subway, and it across the screen said, no azodicarbonamide, a chemical that nobody knew before starting this petition. And I looked over at Mr. Food Babe, and I was like, what? And we just high-fived each other. And it was like this moment of like, wow, like we helped do that. Like that's so cool. And it was such a great moment. And I tell you, they put these little flyers in all those little plastic sleeves at Subway that you get. And the flyer said, no azodicarbonamide, a new improved bread. And everybody was sending me pictures of those little flyers because they knew I wasn't eating there, and so that was really cool to get those pictures too. And I saved one as a souvenir. So.
Do you really we are we?
Yes. Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm a big piece of kale.
So first of all, thank you so much for the work that you do. I really think it's so important because it affects us all, and especially the children. So hopefully you're helping us raise a healthier next generation. And my question is, when you call these companies, what's your strategy? I mean, do you say, Food Babe doing an investigation? or do you, just call as, a random person, hey, curious, and actually, what department do you ask to get routed to?
Yeah, before, so it's much different now than when I started. So when I started, I would just, go through the different channels of like the customer service, or I'd call up the phone number, the hotline that's available online. Now that I'm a food activist and real responsible, I try to reach out to the company and I try to tell them, hey, I'm Vani Hari. I don't try to hide my identity or anything like that. I'm Vani Hari, and I want you to know that I have this question. A lot of times, companies are very scared to answer, especially when it's coming from me. Sometimes they answer right away. Sometimes they call me. Sometimes they invite me to headquarters. So now it's a lot different because I want to make sure I give the company the opportunity to make a change. Now, when a company doesn't respond, or they give me an answer that is completely nonsensical, or they try to cover up something that they do, like General Mills did before I started the petition to remove BHT from cereal. When I emailed General Mills and Kellogg's, they both sent me back this response that was like, BHT is safe, the FDA approved. Yeah, we know we don't use it in Europe, but that's their regulation, and it wasn't good enough. So that's why the petition was necessary, to get them to respond favorably to that. So yeah, it's just different now. But I'm really straightforward. But the thing is that we all have the capability to do that work. I'm not a superhero or anything. I don't have a superpower. I just do I'm very persistent and very tenacious, and I won't take no for an answer. So I just keep going. But I think it's really important. One of the things that I love about all of the change that we've helped inspire is hearing from the CEOs and hearing from these company executives that have said, this is because of consumer demand. And consumer demand comes in phone calls, emails, and social media activism. And that's how they know that there is this demand for safer food. So.
Folks, we have time for a couple more questions. Someone who hasn't asked a question yet, maybe someone over here.
Vani. I wanted to ask a question about sort of how do you get people to transition from eating McDonald's to eating organic? Because I think that there's a lot of space between those two things.
Yes.
And it's a challenging thing to kind of get people to change behavior. So what are some tips that you have for that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, that specific topic is going to be talked about, tomorrow on foodbabe.com if I can get through this blog post I'm writing. But anyways, that's specific. It's so specific to your question. It's going to be good.
To my husband.
Well, this is what you would send to him, this article that I'm writing. But it's really about not so much preaching to the people around you that aren't following this lifestyle, because that's what I was doing and it wasn't working. It was really about leading by example. And when they saw how good my life was, how I was feeling, how I was looking, they wanted a piece of that. And they saw how good I was, what was happening as a result of my habits. They wanted a piece of that. And it wasn't until several years that my brother finally even started trying a green juice. And as a result now, he's lost 20 pounds. He looks awesome. He's my most prized achievement out of everything I've accomplished because I love him so much. But it's because I stopped preaching and I just led by example. And I think that can be really powerful within your families. And you have to be convicted though, right? You can't just say, okay, fine, let's go to McDonald's. No. You need to put your foot down and say, no, I do not support that with my money. I do not vote with my dollars that way. And I think that is another way to do it, is just continue to remember that every time you decide to put something in your mouth, you're voting too.
Bonnie.
Oh, sorry. One sec.
How do I get my people to change? We have the greatest amount of heart disease, diabetes, and all of that. We're the Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. Everybody's just dying at about 54, 55 years old. And the country don't even know this. And I see that one person has made a difference, you. how do I get involved and make a difference for my people?
One way you can do it, have everyone do the 21-day program in this book.
I don't know how they can do this. These people have been hunter-gatherers for thousands of years eating meat, but the problem here is the United States government sends lard, tremendous amount of Pepsi, sugar water, potato chips to these people. How do we change this? This is like, and the average life is 52 to 55 years old. Do you imagine in this country?
Well, one of the ways, I think it's really important to realize that we all have a voice online. And this is a very specific niche community. And, when I started blogging, I felt like I was blogging for a very specific niche community. The organic movement wasn't as large as it is today. The food movement wasn't as large as it is. And so I felt very alone. I didn't realize all of you guys were out there. And I think you would find the same way.
How do we start that? Maybe you could start this. We're talking about, I'm Okalala Lakota. We have like maybe 15 tribes under Lakota. Then you have the Cheyenne. I mean, you have a lot of people that are sick. All the reservations across this country are sick.
I really do believe it starts with knowledge. So it's really important for you to maybe be the messenger in that community. And I really do think you have the power because you're here today and I can tell this is very important to you. And I think you have the power to spread that. And I think another way to do that is to get your government officials involved. It sounds like there's some government programs that need to be reformed.
Let me explain something. The Bureau of Indian Affairs, basically we are wards of the United States government. We weren't even citizens of the United States until 1954. So all the food and everything comes through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is really our enemies. Because it's all bureaucrats, it's all kickbacks, it's just a horrible situation.
Well, I'm going to definitely pay attention to that, and I'll talk to you more about it. Okay, sure.
You've been advocating for talking to the companies, and of course that's a direct way. But there's like something called the Big Foods Dark Act.
Yes.
Where in Congress now they're actually trying to prevent the states that
From enacting labeling laws.
legislation
that's
going to let us know what the GMO foods.
Yeah.
Right.
And they've already, put a lot of money into defeating it in California of all places.
Right.
And so, do you have any suggestions for how to get all of us,
So there's
nation,
right. There's a couple of consumer advocacy groups that are in Washington fighting this right now, and you should go join their Facebook pages and also join their mailing list. But Environmental Working Group, the Center of Food Safety, they will teach you how to contact your congressman. They're the experts on getting legislation changed. I'm unfortunately not an expert at that, but they are, and I'm willing to, of course, help get that message out and keep spreading it. And I eventually do want to get involved at the governmental level because that's really where we're going to be able to change this food system once and for all, because when the subsidies change from going to all the junk food and go to diversification of sustainable farming, that's when we're really going to have health in this country. So I hear you loud and clear, and it's so important. It's so, so important. And I think I just want to mention in the back of the book, there's an appendix actually in there that shows how much money these corporations have spent preventing us from knowing that our food is genetically engineered when 65 other countries in the world get this right. And I believe this is a human rights issue, and this is something that we all need to pay attention to and demand to know what's in our food, especially since one of the chemicals that is closely tied to these genetically engineered ingredients, the reason why these genetically engineered ingredients are invented is to resist this type of herbicide, pesticide called Roundup, and the main ingredient is glyphosate. And this ingredient has just been named a probable carcinogen by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. This is all over the news. And even Mark Bittman wrote an op-ed just yesterday about how we need to stop being guinea pigs to this, and we really need to have a choice of whether we support this system of agriculture or not, because really it's destroying our water, our air, our bodies, and we really need to stand up and fight for our right to know.
Thank you, Vani. Thank you, Vani. All right, folks, if there are no more questions, then we have the Food Babe Way as well as an audio version for sale at the counter in the front room over there. Plus, there are so many of you here. We also have the book for sale at the other counter on the other side of the store in case we get too crowded over here. Vani's going to be signing at the table to the left of the podium. One little bit of housekeeping before we finish up is that there are so many of you here today that if when you got up, you folded your chairs and you stacked it against the wall, that would be a big help in getting this room cleared safely for the signing line. So I want to thank Alison Burgos from Seed, Food, and Wine. And please give another hand to Alison Barton. I'm sorry.